In this video, I want to talk about procrastination, and not in the sense of self-optimization, and I'm not going to give you any bro productivity advice. Instead, I want to share with you something way more effective, something that will actually help you in the long run and not just temporarily. Because there's a really good reason that you keep falling into the gap between good intentions and taking action, and it's probably not what you think. Now, we're going to look at it through a trauma and nervous system lens, which I believe is way more useful because it actually gets to the root of the problem, from which we can then bring about true transformation and change. Everything else is really just a band-aid or a temporary fix that will eventually stop working again, and trust me, I've tried out a lot of these band-aids. Now, before we get into it, if you're new here, my name is Conni Biesalski. I'm a nervous system specialist, a somatic trauma practitioner, as well as a breathwork and meditation teacher. And on this channel, we explore tools and strategies to help you recover from chronic stress, anxiety, and trauma so that you can live a happy and joyful and peaceful life. All right, now, procrastination is human. Perfectly human. And we all struggle with it at times, but it's particularly debilitating if you chronically put things off that you want to do or that you actually have to do. And this could be anything from making an important phone call to paying bills to working on your creative side project or any other passion. The problem comes when we are procrastinating with tasks that are important and must get done. So for instance, I notice my patterns of procrastination come up when bureaucracy is involved. Making phone calls, it's really difficult for me, although it's already much better than it used to be. My procrastination was also really bad for a while when it came to making YouTube videos. Oh man, last year and the year before, I wanted to create YouTube videos so bad, but I just couldn't get myself to actually do it after I had taken a break. And when it comes to procrastinating on things that we actually really want to do, like starting a business or a YouTube channel or making art or writing a book, I find it especially heartbreaking because it means we keep ourselves from expressing and sharing our authentic truth with the world. You see, procrastination is often misunderstood as a form of self-sabotage or laziness, but it is actually a common symptom that often stems from deeper issues. In fact, procrastination can be a protective way to deal with overwhelm and to avoid feeling bad about ourselves. Let me explain. Procrastination is not solely a mindset process. While your mind does impact your mood and your choices, you might be surprised to learn that procrastination is first and foremost a physiological process. Procrastination is what happens when your nervous system perceives a real or imagined threat. And at this point, you might be wondering, why is my nervous system perceiving a threat when clearly and logically I'm totally fine? Well, the threat might be conscious or unconscious. It can be a belief like, I'm not good enough to get this done, or maybe the fear of not doing it perfectly. And for our system, not doing it perfectly could mean rejection or a loss of love and connection. It could also be the fear of the unknown when we're doing something for the very first time, or just simply overwhelm when we have many things to do at once. And so in a fight between your mind's logic and your brain's and nervous system survival functions, yep, your brain and nervous system usually win. If your brain feels unsafe for any reason, your autonomic nervous system will deploy a fight, flight, freeze response. And these physiological survival responses, which serve us well when we're actually in danger, often get mislabeled as procrastination or laziness. Essentially, we procrastinate because something we think we should be doing is too much or unsafe for our nervous system. We simply lack the capacity to expand into the task, and we're unable to mobilize energy to get it done. Another main core underlying issue of procrastination is often a deep self-worth wound. The inner voices and self-criticism from past traumas, often due to a fear of failure and criticism in childhood, can lead to a general sense of inadequacy and a fear of external reactions, which reinforce procrastination. Many of us have been directly or indirectly made to feel as children that we're not okay the way we are. And this has led to a chronic fear of rejection and judgment. In order to avoid coming into contact with this part again, and especially with the pain that lies beneath it, the pain of being judged and having our actions and outcomes evaluated, our system avoids entering certain scenarios, which causes us to sabotage our intentions right from the get-go. This avoidance strategy served us really well in our childhood, but now as adults, we keep avoiding experiences that might trigger feelings of shame and worthlessness. So procrastination is actually an emotional regulation problem. You procrastinate to avoid underlying, often unconscious emotions. You're not actually resisting the task, you're resisting the feelings that come with it. And to make yourself feel better in the moment, you start doing something else, like watching YouTube videos. Researchers did a study in 2013, and they explored the role of emotional regulation in procrastination. And they found that people procrastinate to avoid negative emotions associated with a task, such as fear of failure or anxiety. And they concluded that procrastination can be seen as an emotion regulation strategy rather than a simple failure of willpower or self-discipline. On the other hand, self-destructive behaviors can provide a sense of familiarity and safety, even if it's not healthy or logical. Carl Jung called this repetition compulsion. This is why we sabotage ourselves and find ourselves in similar situations over and over and over again. In essence, we unconsciously repeat emotionally painful situations that happened in the past so that we can finally resolve them. And unless we address these past experiences, it's almost impossible to get out of this cycle. Plus, the familiarity of self-criticism and negative self-image can create a cycle of reinforcement and further procrastination. Now, another underlying core issue is a dysregulated nervous system, which can cause difficulty concentrating. When focus is hard to come by, procrastination is a way to ease the pressure, especially if you're in fight or flight mode, also known as sympathetic mode. Also, our bodies can go into a freeze response when they're overwhelmed and stressed. And the more you try to override your nervous system by pushing or doing surface mindset work or simply biting off more than you can chew, you will become more dysregulated and you're more likely to get yourself stuck in a freeze response. And a freeze response is when you're in a state of having many things to do and you want to get them done, but somehow finding yourself just simply unable to. Your body is just simply freezing up. In this response, there are two equal forces working against each other within your nervous system. On the one hand, I want to get this done, and on the other hand, I can't. So what can we do to overcome the struggle of procrastination? Well, it's important to focus on trauma healing and self-regulation. So here are 7 steps to deal with procrastination as a trauma response. But before we get into the steps, one important advice is don't assume that this is just the way I am. Your brain is not set in stone. It can always change, no matter how old you are. And you can totally overcome procrastination and do all the things you want and need to do without the inner battle. And another advice is actually, when you want to get moving, don't berate yourself. Shaming self-talk produces stress hormones, which will further aggravate your body's stress response. All right, let's get into it. Step number 1 is creating awareness and self-compassion. To break the cycle of procrastination, it's important to be aware of your unconscious patterns and to practice observing yourself and your thinking habits and when you judge yourself or when you get stuck. So when you notice yourself procrastinating, instead of judging yourself, you can learn to relate to yourself with self-compassion. And you might want to say to yourself, and preferably you do this out loud, hey, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm stuck here right now because my nervous system is trying to help and support me. And then just notice how these words land in your body. Step number 2 is connecting to and sensing your body. Next time you notice that you're procrastinating more than you would like to, Stop for a moment and notice the sensations in your body, the freeze sensations, and then be with them for a bit and allow them to be present. This in itself might be a game changer. So rather than labeling yourself as lazy or self-sabotaging, you can acknowledge the freeze response and take a moment to simply listen to your body. Step number 3 is engaging in practices that calm or activate our nervous system to help bring it into balance. So depending on if you're more stuck in sympathetic or freeze mode, each type of procrastination requires a different set of interventions. If you're in freeze mode, try out activating practices such as dancing, tapping your body, activating breath work like Kapalabhati, for example. If you're in hyperarousal or you're feeling anxious, try out down-regulating practices such as humming or diaphragmatic breathing, maybe take a cold shower. The really cool thing is you don't need to feel motivated for down-regulation or up-regulation techniques to work. Motivation is the consequence of emotional regulation, not the antecedent. Step number 4 is exploring your emotions. See if you can feel what's actually underneath your procrastination behavior. Maybe you can become aware of any underlying emotions or beliefs around not being good enough. Notice any sensations in your body, maybe any that are related to sadness or shame or fear or even anger. Usually there are underlying emotions underneath your procrastination behavior. Sometimes it might take something like journaling or meditation to actually get closer to them and allow them to rise up. Step number 5 is to simplify your tasks. It really helps to create simple structures and to take small, tiny baby steps to train your self-efficacy. I personally keep my daily to-do list to 3 items because otherwise I get easily overwhelmed and stuck in freeze. I also sometimes write down the simplest step I can take. So instead of writing down, make a YouTube video, which is like this huge thing that actually includes a lot of steps, I simply write down, create a Notion document for a new video and come up with a working title. Step number 6 is to approach procrastination with curiosity and kindness. This is crucial because that's what actually allows for transformation and healing. I highly invite you to get curious about this part of you, this procrastination part of you. And there are some questions to help you get started. For example, how did you develop? And what is your role? What are you protecting me from? And what would happen if you stop doing your job? And what do you need? How can I support you? A really good idea is to journal the answers out. And if you want to dive even deeper into parts work, which is what this is called, I highly recommend checking out the book No Bad Parts by the founder of Internal Family Systems, Richard Schwartz. And lastly, step number 7 is to ask for help. If you struggle to make any progress on your own, it's totally fine to get support. And I would actually highly recommend looking into working with a trauma therapist or coach to address deeper wounding underneath your procrastination habits. In the end, navigating procrastination as a trauma response is really about learning to prioritize without overriding your nervous system and instead doing a task in a way that includes your nervous system. And when we understand procrastination as a trauma response, it allows us to shift our focus from self-judgment to healing. And by addressing the root cause of our procrastination, we can develop better self-regulation skills, which ultimately allows us to achieve our goals. If you would like to learn more on how to use the breath to regulate your nervous system, I created a course for you called Breathwork and Nervous System Foundations. It's a self-guided online course in which you will learn essential skills on how to use conscious breathing and somatic practices to sustainably regulate your nervous system in order to enhance your mental, emotional, and physical health. I will leave a link below so you can go and check it out. And with that, I'll see you soon. Peace.